Today is January 19th, 2025. XRP is trading at around $3.15. The volume is around 90.8 billion. Rowan Exchanges had a notable post on the platform X, why would you need to make Bitcoin great again? I thought, according to Maxis, that Bitcoin was already great. The truth is, Bitcoin is declining, not in price but in relevance. Notice the name of the event was the Crypto Ball, not the Bitcoin Ball. The rise of crypto with real-world intrinsic utility like XRP, XLM, HBAR, etc. threatens Bitcoin's digital gold fantasy narrative. The hat "Make Bitcoin Great Again" is a projection of existential fear that Bitcoin is no longer culturally nor technologically relevant. Not to mention the absurdity of the statement. Making Bitcoin great again is akin to making the Ford Model T great again. It's only a matter of time before this Bitcoin charade unravels, and not even a U.S. strategic reserve can save it. That's because the world's wealthiest and most sophisticated financial strategists, unless they risk their reputations, can't keep ignoring Bitcoin's underperformance or pretending that better performing, more innovative cryptos are somehow less significant.
Institutional adoption has been sort of a little different than we anticipated. In some ways it's been slower than we thought. In some ways it's been much faster. I think institutional adoption from like non-financial institutions and non-financial companies has kind of been slow. I think we probably would have expected more of a bottom-up adoption where like ordinary people would be using crypto first, like democratized remittances, for example, and that kind of didn't happen. But I think what did happen that's interesting is the sort of financial system was sort of ripe for adopting it. The way I think about it is tech has like absorbed other industries, like tech ate retail through companies like Amazon, and tech ate music with digital downloads and streaming services, and I think tech is coming for finance, and I think we're seeing that with the institutional DeFi that we're seeing today. And these are extremely interesting because they're institutional adoption, but they're not just like Ripple was really early with institutional adoption for payments, but that wasn't institutions that brought their customers to the blockchain, right? The customer just made a payment and the customer didn't know
it's invisible. Yeah,
exactly. What I think we're just starting to see now is institutions that are doing things like issuing stable coins or tokenizing real world assets, and they're actually bringing their customers to these layer one blockchains. And I think that's an interesting model for mass adoption that I think we're just starting to see right now.
But so when you think about the vision and even, we'll talk, and I'm going off script a bit. We're supposed to cover certain things, but I already warned the team that we might go anywhere here.
Who's going to criticize him, right?
They can't yell at me.
They can just rip the
they do yell at me. But I'm genuinely curious when, the original ideas of starting the XRP ledger, like what were some of the reasons you felt like, hey, we can build a better blockchain for payments? Like just talk about maybe some of those early conversations of how it started.
I think the very earliest conception that we had is Bitcoin had just hit the public eye and we had just started to learn about it. And I think one of the things that we realized is that even if you thought, as many people did at the time, that like Bitcoin would just take over the world, it's like many other things. Like you have a new religion, you think, well, if everybody just believed the same religion, it'd be great. But that could be, any payment network would be great if everybody in the world had access to it. Right. And we started to realize that this idea that Bitcoin would somehow solve interoperability because everybody would use it for everything was just as naive as believing that any payment system would sort of solve interoperability.
Right.
So what we started to look at with the XRP ledger at first was we thought that proof of work wasn't really going to work out. We were kind of ahead of time. But the first cracks were appearing in that narrative. And the other thing that we realized is like 99.99% of the world's value wasn't in blockchain at the time and wasn't going to be in the very near term. And so there had to be, I guess what we call today bridges, there had to be connectivity. And so one of the very first things that we built into the XRP ledger was issued assets, what we call stable coins today, and a DEX, and this sort of multi-asset. The idea that you would use the blockchain for settlement, but that it wouldn't necessarily just be a native cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it strikes me as someone who wasn't there at the very beginning that the foresight you all had around things like a DEX, an AMM, that really, it was way ahead. And I think, in my opinion, the XRP ledger doesn't get enough credit for, which I guess I hear you saying it really was born of the belief that if 99.9% of all value is not on chain, you have to find ways to actually get it on chain, make it liquid, make it accessible.
Yeah, it's funny that those concepts like have names now, and at the time, we didn't call it a DEX, but like we built a DEX in 2012. We didn't call them stable coins, but we had stable coins in the very early releases. And we also had something that is not radical at this time, but was radical then, which was accounts that you could manage. With Bitcoin, like if you have a receiving address and you want to change that receiving address because you want to manage your funds differently, you want to change like who can receive your payments, you have to give everybody a new address. It's very difficult to advertise this. This idea that an account being a thing that you could have and manage, which is alien to Bitcoin, but of course Ethereum is built around that concept. So yeah, it was kind of interesting watching, as the technology unfurled and some of those concepts. So Ethereum staked out its own place